In the port city of Lith, a boat slowly docks. A person exclaims, "Finally!" Raymond is thrilled to have arrived. Street vendors vigorously call out to attract customers. The bustling voices create a lively atmosphere. Looking at the bustling scene, Raymond is even more excited and can hardly believe this is the port city of Lith. Walker, draping an arm around him, is amazed at his happiness. He is pulled down by someone and still manages to ask Walker if he is excited too. Taryn laughs loudly, eager to immediately partake in the entertainment activities available here. He looks up the majestic gate in front of them, marking the start of their journey. In the dark night, many people from various professions and abilities are present, posing as dangers in the world, ready to embark on their own journeys. A magical gate appears. Behind the mysterious gate, which no one knows when appeared, are terrifying monsters not found elsewhere. However, the powerful and valuable items inside these gates ignite the ambitions of those wanting to become rich. Walker seriously mentions that they need some bait. Raymond is puzzled by this. Walker explains that many have died due to unexpected events, so they need bait. Charlotte, leaning against the door, agrees with this idea as they need someone to distract so they can escape. Two prisoners look through the iron bars. The owner of this place greets customers warmly, offering a market that specializes in providing slaves for bait. Walker points in the direction the owner is indicating and suggests two large-bodied prime slaves, confident that there will be no regrets in purchasing them. He looks into the cell and sees two healthy young men, deciding to buy both, pleasing the owner who is happy to make the sale. Their group stands in front of a red gate. Walker looks at a post next to the gate and decides to carve on it, to let others know there are people inside. He slashes a long line on the post, declaring that his team is the first. Walker turns back and asks his teammates if they are ready. The three others seem eager to go in. They all pass through the red gate. Raymond feels strange, his eyes wide with amazement. In front of them are numerous gigantic mushrooms. Raymond looks around with interest, having never been to such a place before, which is very different from what he imagined. Walker leads the group and advises everyone not to be nervous because these paths are far from the monsters' dens, so they are relatively safe. Charlotte, who is at the back, hears Walker saying that they need to find a new gate as a precaution. She feels something behind her. A monster opens its large mouth towards Charlotte and blood splatters. When the others see this, they are terrified. Elle asks why there are monsters here, and Raymond, also startled, calls out her name. Another monster rises next to them. They find themselves surrounded by monsters, confused about why there are so many. Someone, angry, grabs something and curses. Walker readies his fire arrow. He shoots an arrow at a monster, but then sensing something is wrong, he quickly orders to tie the bait to a tree and tells his team to run. The person used as bait pleads to come along, but Taryn pulls out a knife and threatens to make them stay. Raymond ties the other bait to a tree, continuously apologizing. Walker tells his teammates to run fast despite the pleas of the two baits. A monster attacks one of the baits. The other also faces the claws of another monster. The three others have run to another place. Walker is both scared and angry. They have failed this time, and now, regardless of whether they can break through the gate, they must find a way to escape. Raymond is so distraught by his earlier actions that he doesn't even notice when his teammates tell him to leave. Seeing him like this, Taryn angrily grabs his collar and forces him to listen to Walker. He advises him to calm down, saying they can try again so he shouldn't give up. Taryn confidently says they will soon leave, but a monster appears behind him. It bites down hard on Taryn. Walker, in panic, calls out to his teammate. Taryn's body, now bloody, lies on the ground. Raymond, breathing heavily from fear, barely manages to call Taryn's name. Walker, angry, readies his fire arrow at the monster. It quickly turns and stretches its long tongue out. The tongue wraps around Walker's neck. It pulls Walker towards its mouth. A stream of blood spurts out. Raymond once again witnesses the death of his teammate. He says no, unconsciously stepping back. He falls to the ground but tries to keep running. The sharp teeth of the monster are right behind him. The monster opens its wide mouth. Raymond also screams in pain as if his leg has been bitten. Someone approaches. Raymond tries to grasp at the ground. Looking up, he sees someone standing in front of him. Elle listens coldly as he is called bait. Raymond points to the branch where Elle is standing, expressing relief that Elle is still alive and pleading for him to come to the rescue. Raymond's voice trembles as he begs, explaining that all of his teammates are dead except for him and Elle. He apologizes for past events, saying he didn't mean for them to happen. His hands shaking, he tells Elle that escaping alone isn't possible and having someone else wouldn't be bad. He grits his teeth as he pleads, but Elle remains silent, standing there. Seeing him like that, Raymond angrily tells him to stop standing there and come help him. Elle smirks slightly and jumps down from the tree, pretending to be innocent and saying it seems he has arrived too late. Raymond is almost completely in the monster's mouth. Only his shoulders and above are visible. Raymond looks at him in shock. He accepts his fate and curses at Elle, mocking him for thinking he can escape alone and questioning who will be next. But before he can finish, the monster's jaws close. It now stands facing Elle. It gains momentum. Running quickly towards him, the monster opens its mouth wide in front of him. L looks at it with cold eyes and silently says no. He picks up a spear, reminding himself that he will not die. Behind him, a ring of fire appears as he points the spear at the monster. Moments later, the monster falls in front of him. L gently smooths his hair, silently reassuring himself that he will not die here. On the battlefield, L's team is observing from a cliff nearby. One of them announces the approaching monsters. Along with the monsters, the leader of the Corntail is flying towards L. In this situation, Alexis remains calm and informs that the current situation of the group has no refuge left. All organizations, as well as the 6 heroes, have sacrificed themselves, leaving only L, the last adventurer. As she finishes speaking, Corntail also arrives, roars, and attacks L's group. After a battle, all of L's teammates have sacrificed themselves, leaving only him, his body covered in wounds. L looks up the sky, watching Corntail's head being regenerated at a dizzying speed, feeling helpless to do anything. In the end, L could only scream in outrage as he thought about the sacrifices of his teammates to protect him. Then, unsteadily standing up, L exerted all his strength to launch an arrow at Corntail, but the arrow shattered halfway and his body reached its limits as he helplessly watched Corntail's fire approach him. Suddenly, L was awakened by a splash of water thrown at him. He looked bewilderedly at the merchant in front of him and wondered if he was still alive. Then L quickly realized that this place was the slave market and the merchant was the same person who had managed him 6 years ago, understanding that he had returned to the past. The merchant, seeing L looking elsewhere, angrily punched him. After the blow, L was still uncertain whether he was dreaming, but could find no better explanation and accepted the situation. Once again, the merchant led Walker's group to buy slaves, tirelessly boasting about the quality of the slaves here, with Walker quickly agreeing to buy 2 in front of him. For L, he recognized this as his second chance. In the forest, L picked up a staff and pondered its benefits for himself, stumbling upon a severed foot and finding a ring inside it. Suddenly, a group of monsters surrounded him, and he quickly reacted, realizing they were attracted by the smell of blood. Despite the monsters having the advantage in numbers, L easily defeated them with the weapons he had just picked up. Suddenly, L's staff failed to activate, almost causing him to be hit by 2 monsters. He guessed the staff was temporarily inactive, so he used it like a sword to attack the monsters. When the staff's power restored, L unleashed a combined move with the staff and the ring to swiftly deal with the monsters. Behind him, Charlotte was still alive, her body covered in wounds. She struggled to crawl towards L and questioned his identity, suggesting that this was his conspiracy. Faced with Charlotte's questions, L just coldly looked at her and explained that this was not his scheme, expressing his strong dislike for those who use slaves as bait. In the city, people were discussing the appearance of a slave like L, but he seemed uninterested in this gossip, focusing instead on how to avoid repeating his previous fate. At this moment, L also stopped in front of the guild's door. In front of the guild, there was a bustling crowd. Abbas was discussing with his subordinate about the slave who had survived and returned. The subordinate confirmed Abbas's question. Additionally, he mentioned that the slave had returned unharmed, which slightly surprised Abbas. Abbas dismissed his cigarette and sought confirmation. He immediately noticed something unusual about the situation and pondered why the slave had not fled but instead returned. He then explained the reason for the slave's return, realizing that escaping from his grasp was not easy. After finishing his thought, Abbas asked if this information came from the Gafford Machinists Guild. The subordinate did not answer directly but provided more information about the slave who now wished to become an adventurer. Abbas was astonished and credulous that the bait could unlock the first ring. Deep in thought, he contemplated the potential complications ahead. The next remark from his subordinate, indicating that the slave wanted to change the agreement, abruptly caught Abbas off guard. Abbas stood up sharply in response to the news that the bait wanted to become an adventurer. He anxiously questioned such arrogance, and the subordinate added that Rakan had requested Abbas to check it out. Abbas, unable to believe it, slammed the table. Angrily mulling over his thoughts, it seemed there was something hidden behind his reaction. Shortly after, the subordinate left, leaving Abbas muttering to himself. According to the princess's policy, when someone is unable to repay their loan, they are deemed a slave. Based on this information, L became a slave after his father died. The LW he had bought was fraudulently inflated in price, and the chairman declared him unable to pay. This led to L working unpaid for 6 years for the guild. In the office, L, now resolved, seized the opportunity for revenge. He calmly introduced himself as El Palm and contemplated his situation with Abbas. Abbas, not one for long conversations, sipped his tea and made a direct offer. Looking at him with a resolute gaze, he allowed L to become an F-level adventurer. L politely thanked him for the offer, but then requested to be upgraded to E-level, already scheming in his heart. Hearing this, Abbas was quite surprised and jokingly suggested the guild promote him directly to A level, but El remained calm, explaining he was fully capable of reaching E level. Using all his persuasive arguments, El concluded by emphasizing that an adventurer could indeed survive and return. Upon hearing this, Abbas partially agreed. He firmly presented his reasoning, arguing that El had only passed through the lower ranks so far. He tried to retain the contract that El had not yet fully paid because he feared risks. After some calculations, Abbas agreed to El's request with a condition that he must prove his claims. In a dense forest, El was meeting his new teammates. Chev stepped forward to greet him and introduced himself along with the other members of the team. Everyone was friendly towards El, but he responded only with a few polite words. They then discussed El's magical abilities, the compensation, and the tasks assigned by the guild. Max was complaining about the low prices the guild was paying for equipment when Tom reminded him. Soon after, the group entered the gate, with Chev leading the way. Quickly, they moved inside the gate. They gathered in a clearing and decided to establish a base there, which they set up shortly after. Chev then divided the members into two groups to scout the area, with him and El forming one team. Along the way, Chev continuously tried to engage El in conversation, but he responded only superficially. Just as Chev turned around to invite El to join his team, he noticed El observing a footprint on the path. At night, while everyone enjoyed dinner and discussed work, only El remained silent. While El was sleeping, Chev's group suddenly approached him with the intention of stealing his possessions, casually discussing how they had spiked El's food and the value of the fire staff, with Max leading the attack. As the knife pierced the fabric, Max realized something was amiss. He flipped the fabric over to find no one underneath. The others were stunned, and Chev quickly ordered them to search for El. Just as Chev finished speaking, an explosion occurred nearby, but he managed to jump away in time to avoid it. They then speculated about the cause of the explosion, and Tom, in astonishment, pointed ahead and called Chev's attention. There was a slime looking at them, showing a clear expression of fear. Chev stuttered that El was using them as bait. As soon as Chev finished speaking, the slime attacked the group, forcing them to abandon their base and flee. El, observing from a distance, thought Chev was foolish because his plan had too many flaws and wondered if the slime was the area boss. As the slime chased them, Chev and his group discussed it while running, guessing it was a gold slime with a body made of acid. Just as Chev was about to detail its abilities, the slime shot an arrow, which they luckily dodged. Only then did Chev mention that the most dangerous ability of the slime was his acid arrows. The group had no time to rest after the attack as the slime continued its pursuit, leaving them only the option to dodge and look for an opportunity to strike its core on its head to destroy it. Max, seeing the slime momentarily recovering, took a risky move to attack but was split in half by an acid arrow. To Chev's astonishment, he couldn't understand how the slime could shoot an acid arrow when it was supposed to be 10 seconds away from recovery. Without giving Chev time to think further, the slime continued shooting arrows, completely annihilating Chev's group. El, hidden behind a nearby tree, silently monitored the situation, concluding that the ordeal was over and understanding why previous teams had failed against this boss, which was of a higher level than the adventurers. Remembering Abbas' challenge, El decided to stay and fight. When the slime moved away, El used magic to attack its core, severely wounding it. He estimated that only 4 to 5 more shots were needed to defeat the slime. Then El drew his dagger to fight. The slime shot several arrows at him, but he easily dodged them. While dodging, El transferred magical energy from his ring to the string of the dagger, throwing it into a tree trunk for better mobility, and recalled his past title as the best long-range fighter. With this agility, El moved between trees and accurately targeted the core of the slime with a fire missile, until the final shot was dodged by it. However, he remained calm and used the power from his ring combined with an arrow to shoot it. The body of the slime shattered, exposing its core. El seized the opportunity to destroy the core, but the slime tried to stop him by creating a giant arm. As the slime's giant arm almost reached El, he quickly reacted by using the core to pull himself in a different direction to evade the strike and counterattacked with a fire missile. The slime attempted to block the attack with its hand, but El's arrow suddenly changed its trajectory, striking directly into its core. The core and the body of the slime exploded, spewing acid around, forcing El to use the core to jump onto a nearby tree branch. After the acid had dissolved, he returned to the defeated slime to check the situation. There, El found a ruby and absorbed it into his body. Back in the office, Abbas asked El why he returned alone with the other items. El calmly explained how Chev's group had plotted to steal his items but were destroyed by the monster. Abbas asked which monster it was, and El replied that it was a gold slime that had swallowed all the items. Abbas became angry, not just because the items were destroyed, but also because the mission had failed. According to the story's rules, once someone enters and exits a gate, others lose their chance to enter again. Although Abbas knew the gate had closed, he was puzzled how a first circle hunter like El could handle such a boss, then noted that El was only focused on survival and not the items. El did not argue further but told Abbas that he had consumed the slime and showed him his 2 rings. Abbas couldn't believe his eyes and asked if El had swallowed its mana stone. El did not answer but requested Abbas to upgrade him to rank E as promised. However, Abbas directly promoted him to rank D and told El that if he agreed to work with him, he would arrange for him to be upgraded to rank C. At this moment, El was signing the agreement with Abbas, who was contemplating the idea of ranking someone with less than 3 circles at C, which was somewhat excessive. The ranks of adventurers depended on their circle levels, as these were the clearest indicators of their strength. But considering El's incredible potential, Abbas knew he needed him. El, noticing Abbas's changing attitude, just sighed and remembered a red gate about to appear, an event that drew the attention of all merchant guilds, including the Gaffer Guild. After signing, El thought it was a good time to move forward with his plans and requested Abbas for a loan. Hearing this, Abbas couldn't help but curse him inwardly. The appearance of the gate is a dark wizard's conspiracy aimed at destroying the world of Feng Thu, and in 3 years, all monsters will break out from the gate, ensuring humanity's defeat. Abbas watches El from a window, while El walks, contemplating why the Gaffer Guild invested in him and how to sensibly spend the money he has earned. Soon, El arrives at the slave market, where a trader greets him and persistently showcases various slaves. However, El shakes his head, requesting the trader to lead him to a specific person, after which the trader takes him to a detention cell and explains the place. Shortly after, the trader brings El to the cell door and asks if he is sure about his choice. Before the trader can finish, El confirms that this is the person he has been looking for. Remembering his past life, the death of the hero Aran had accelerated the apocalypse, initiated by a student of Miss Debo. The student angrily sends El away, but El silently reflects on the student's slave status and considers Debo's actions reckless. In his previous life, Debo was often compared to El, as they shared many similarities. Just as El is about to speak about their similarities, Debo is released and El immediately asks his price. Debo responds provocatively, and El, thinking about their mutual need for money and recalling that Debo has a sick sister, offers $1 million to their astonishment. El then states his demands to Debo and presents a contract. Debo quickly snatches the document to sign it. After concluding their business, El reminds both of them that they will approach the gate, and on the way there, Debo mentions his discomfort with new weapons, but El tells him he can cancel the contract if he dislikes it. The gate they are about to enter, designated for 8 people, prompts Debo to ask where the other members are, not realizing it would be just him and El. As Debo comprehends this, El kicks him into the gate. Inside, Debo scolds El for entering a gate meant for 8 with only 2, but then remembers El's assistance and hesitates to say more. As Debo finishes speaking, monsters appear, prompting him to stand in defense, and seeing this, El tells Debo to move aside and then eliminates each monster with fire arrows. El also reminds Debo not to make the same mistakes again. Inside a building, a subordinate of the white-haired man reports on the progress of their plan and asks if they should continue their actions. The white-haired man agrees and states that everything will be decided by her. The charred remains of monsters are scattered across the desert, with a total of 27 collected by Debo for mana stones. After hearing the report, El urges them to continue on their journey. Walking bareheaded under the blazing sun feels torturous. Debo previously thought El Palm was crazy, but it turns out he is exceptionally skilled, witnessing El's remote control abilities for the first time. This thought makes Debo laugh heartily, realizing that accompanying a skilled person leads to greater profits, and a 70-30 split would be enough to cover his medical and living expenses. Suddenly, El stops and declares that he has spotted them again, the stumps from before numbering about 8 to 9. The two take cover behind a rock to avoid alarming the creatures. El mentions that this is a perfect number, which confuses Debo. With a small rock thrown as a distraction, Debo charges from above, decisively cleaving 1 and 2 with an axe. The surprise attack makes the rest wary, and Debo finds it challenging as it's his first time using this type of weapon. The awkward feel of the axe complicates things further as he is forced to deal with the whole group alone. Feeling overwhelmed, he calls out for El's help. El, still behind the rock formation, silently observes, noting Debo's awkward movements but understanding since Debo had mentioned his preference for swords. However, El believes that the battle axe is the most suitable weapon for Debo, given his past selection as the apprentice of the hero Aran, a master of such weapons. As the monstrous trees with thick root-like claws charge, Debo feels increasingly comfortable with the axe, finding it stronger and more versatile than a sword, even discovering a fitting technique. In a flash, Debo successively kills several creatures. From a distance, El quietly admires Debo's prowess, impressed by his ability even before fully awakening. Suddenly, the rocky mountain shakes like an earthquake, and a huge root-like limb bursts from the cliffside, aiming straight for Debo. He quickly dodges, recognizing it as a gigantic Stumpy. At this moment, El rushes forward to save Debo, throwing him to the side and joining the fight. The monster, though large, merely intercepted El's initial missile with ease. Seeing this, L switched tactics, firing a missile combined with remote control that made it extremely agile and unpredictable. Believing that a single hit would suffice to defeat the creature, L was baffled when the Stumpy again blocked the missile. At this point, Dibbo panicked and began to flee, urging L Palm to run quickly as their magic seemed futile. While retreating, L reflected on the situation, realizing that the Stumpy shouldn't have been able to block the missile. Suspecting the problem lay in its branches, the creature's thick roots swung violently, cracking the ground and targeting Dibbo once more. As an unavoidable attack neared, L swiftly used magic to levitate the shattered ground, lifting them both to safety. In that moment of narrow escape, Dibbo sincerely thanked him. However, there was no time to rest as another group of stumps appeared. L decisively left Dibbo to deal with them while he focused on the giant Stumpy. Without waiting for Dibbo's agreement, L charged towards the Stumpy and launched another missile. Dibbo, watching in horror, believed that without a solid plan, defeating it was a fantasy. They should have fled instead. A massive explosion occurred, but the missile was still obstructed by the strong branches. Just when it seemed futile, a missile from nowhere struck directly at one of the Stumpy's eyes, catching it off guard. Dibbo, standing below, was stunned that L had actually managed to hit it. L Palm continued to focus, chanting spells while navigating the Stumpy's nimble branches, a significant challenge. It was difficult for him to simultaneously dodge and find openings using remote control. But now, enhanced by his level 2 abilities, L could cast spells twice as effectively. The Stumpy was quickly penetrated by successive missiles, and Dibbo, while fighting off a pack of stumps, marveled at the ferocity of the attack. Despite the Stumpy's speed, it struggled to defend against the relentless barrage of missiles. Unexpectedly, a few stumps that Dibbo had missed attacked El Pound from behind. He calmly dispatched them while teasing Dibbo, but this disruption allowed the Stumpy to counterattack aggressively. Just as it seemed El would be hit, Dibbo rushed to his rescue. Dibbo sliced through the branches, saving El, who smirked in appreciation. Together, they coordinated their combat efforts. After Dibbo's last-minute save, El commented with a smile that it finally had an effect. El commanded Dibbo to charge forward while he continued shooting arrows at the Stumpy, causing its branches to explode. Enraged, the Stumpy turned and lashed out with its vines. Seizing the moment, Dibbo lunged forward and delivered powerful blows with his battle axe, severing all of the creature's limbs. El, quick to notice the monster trying to attack Dibbo from both sides, immediately ordered that he would handle the right side, and Dibbo, understanding, swung his battle axe toward the left. Together, they synchronized their attacks, effectively cutting off the Stumpy's assault. Dibbo once again surged forward to chop at the creature's branches, but was unexpectedly struck from behind by the Stumpy. Bloodied, Dibbo was thrown from the air, but a timely rock formation caught him. However, the relentless Stumpy shattered the rock, sending Dibbo flying once more. El quickly realized the trouble and used his magic to catch Dibbo again. Dibbo, regaining his footing, attempted to distract the creature. In its confusion, Dibbo struck a blow to its eye, aiming to finish it. Following up, El used magic to return the battle axe to Dibbo's hand. With a firm grip, Dibbo delivered a critical strike. Unexpectedly, the Stumpy, in its last moments, tried to pull Dibbo down with it, opening its mouth in an attempt to kill him. From behind, El unleashed a barrage of fireballs, igniting the creature's body. The monster screamed in agony as it burned. El approached Dibbo, praising his good fight. Dibbo reciprocated the compliment. Together, they silently watched as the creature burned to ashes. Later that evening in a small house, little Deneb was preparing a modest dinner when there was a knock at the door. Tentatively opening it, she was stunned to see Dino standing there. Her hands trembling, she barely managed to utter "brother" before tears streamed down her face. The siblings embraced each other emotionally. Meanwhile, in a house deep in the forest, El returned to his empty home. He stood silently at the window, his silhouette lonely. In his study, Abbas furrowed his brows in difficulty as he made a decision. With the upcoming high-level gate expedition for 100 adventurers approaching, he was still unsure who to choose. He was worried about Lord Rackham's potential reprimand and the significance of the event, which was enticing due to the presence of rare, even legendary items. However, the difficulty was also tremendous. He considered the Nadish's sisters from the Richie Golden Guild, powerful sorceresses with jewel magic circles, far surpassing the adventurers of the Gafford Mechanics Guild. Among all the guilds, his was considered the weakest. Then Abbas, holding El's resume, pondered deeply. Suddenly, a forceful entry startled him. It was Lord Rackham. He had come to check on the progress of selecting adventurers for the upcoming battle. Seeing that Abbas had yet to make a decision, Rackham was displeased and inquired about the adventurers Abbas had previously mentioned. Abbas admitted his uncertainty about El, as Chev's team had perished, leaving no way to verify El's abilities. Rackham gently suggested why not continue testing, proposing to form a team from all the candidates in consideration and have them collectively storm any nearby gate to truly test their capabilities. He expressed genuine interest in discovering their true abilities. On the day of the gate assault, when El and Dibbo arrived, many others were already there. A group approached El to see which team he was with. Another group, recognizing Debo as a slave, showed obvious disdain, a common prejudice among adventurers against slaves. El noticed they also bore dual magic circles, indicating they didn't need a slave as bait like before. At that moment, Abbas arrived to announce the rules. The trial would begin, and those who demonstrated potential would be given the opportunity. Most did not grasp the significance until Abbas revealed the grand prize, the chance to participate in the 100-person gate conquest. Everyone was surprised, and El realized Abbas's scheme. When the gate opened, those with significant strength strategized amongst themselves. They agreed to cooperate only in battling the boss. Prior to that, they would split up to explore, reconvening only if signaled. El and Debo followed the crowd into the gate. The first group quickly encountered a monster. The leader Dolan used powerful magic to defeat it, but as the smoke cleared, they discovered the monster was unharmed. At that moment, their team realized something was wrong. They were surrounded by a horde of monsters. After a brutal fight that left them battered, they managed to eliminate the creatures. They were horrified to realize they would have to face an unimaginable number of monsters, and they would soon exhaust if it continued like this. Dolan decided they couldn't risk their lives in such a manner, ordering to abandon the prior agreement and tackle the boss alone before they were worn out by the other creatures. On the other side, El had predicted the movements of the other groups. Dibbo was panting heavily after having to kill 3 monsters simultaneously. Dibbo thought El's suggestion was because they needed to make the most of their time before they ran out of strength. The two voiced differing opinions. Dibbo wanted to tackle the boss first, while El insisted on clearing out the smaller monsters first. Dibbo was confused, but El explained that since everyone else was focusing on the boss, they should clear the monsters. He believed that the criteria for selection included not just facing the boss, but also managing the lesser threats, adding that more people at the boss meant higher risk and more schemes among the groups. Furthermore, El sensed some looming danger. At that moment, Dolan's team found an exit, and she instructed to mark it. Suddenly, one of her team members started laughing loudly. Dolan quickly intervened, fearing the noise would attract monsters. On closer inspection, she saw the team member's face twisted in a grotesque, tearful laugh of agony. Soon, other members also began laughing uncontrollably, and she realized the area was filled with toxic gas. As they planned their escape, a monster resembling a poisonous mushroom appeared behind them. It was the source of the toxic smoke. Dolan, ultimately unable to escape the effects of the toxic gas, began laughing maniacally, her eyes filled with terror that she could not hide. On a high cliff of the swift river below, 2 elves named El and Debo were walking along the cliff when they spotted a bright red light in the sky. Debo recognized it as a signal flare, signaling the start of their mission to confront a boss. When they reached the rendezvous point, they discovered that a group was missing. Someone who had spoken to El earlier explained that someone had inquired about the Dolan group but was dismissed, thinking they had arrived too late. At this moment, Ibru explained that he had discovered the boss and even witnessed the scene of Dolan's team being killed. The boss turned out to be a frenzied poisonous mushroom, which terrified everyone. They felt that even with a large number, they could not defeat this boss and considered finding a direct way out to escape. Debo, unclear, asked El about the boss. El ignored the question and analyzed that the boss was really hard to deal with, as its toxic emissions prevented anyone from getting close, making numbers irrelevant. Ibru then announced that the boss was right in front of the exit, so they must confront it to escape. Debo suggested that the boss was nothing against El's missiles, but El stopped him, explaining that the skin of the frenzied poisonous mushroom was as tough as steel, and being a boss, it was even stronger. While the team was still figuring out what to do, El spoke up, offering 50,000 mesos to anyone willing to act as bait to help the others escape. His proposal infuriated Debo. Ibru angrily accused El of being a money-obsessed slave and a hindrance, believing that El would die before the adventurers could escape. Debo angrily realized that Ibru was just trying to provoke and truly had no intention of acting as bait. El, remaining calm, asked if they had a better plan, which left Iburu speechless. El clarified that their group included a 2-circle mage and a 1-circle mage. Debo was shocked to realize that he had been awakened without knowing. El used this revelation to silence Iburu. Another adventurer then spoke up, agreeing to pay but noting they did not carry that much money currently. El agreed they could settle the payment after escaping, assuring that if they didn't make it out, there would be no loss. However, he stipulated that everyone present must agree, and they needed to decide right then. At the entrance, the boss was feasting on the remains of an adventurer's body when suddenly a blazing arrow flew straight at it. The unexpected attack caught the boss off guard. El instructed Debo to move as soon as the boss noticed them. Debo was still in disbelief about having to do this. Just then, the boss charged at them like lightning, terrifying Debo. It moved so quickly that it was immediately behind the 2 of them. The other adventurers rushed toward the gate before the boss could turn back to kill El. As the gate opened, others dashed out. At this point, El and Debo were faced with other monsters blocking their path. In anger, Dibbo immediately activated an attack mechanism. A sable strike cleared the monsters out of their way. However, a moment's hesitation allowed one monster to open its mouth towards him, but L instantly fired a missile to block its attack, allowing Dibbo to escape. L seized the opportunity to shoot again, but the boss dodged. As it charged at him, L managed to redirect the arrow. Yet the agile boss continued to dodge the incoming arrows. Just as the beast was about to reach them, the two jumped off the high cliff. The monster followed in their trajectory. Mid-air, Dibbo gave it a defiant gesture, realizing that L had aimed an arrow at it. The arrow struck the beast, detonating in mid-air. Both of them then fell into the rapid river and were swept away. After drifting along the river, the two L's managed to climb ashore, drenched. Dibbo, gasping for breath, couldn't comprehend what had just happened. L, wringing out his clothes calmly, remarked that they needed to prepare better if they were to kill it. Dibbo, trembling, asked what L meant by wanting to kill it. L's firm response drove Dibbo to despair, upset that their initial quest to hunt monsters had escalated to facing such a formidable boss. L explained that the circumstances had changed, the competition was over, and most importantly, killing the boss would bring additional rewards. He then asked Dibbo if he wanted to break the contract, to which Dibbo, scratching his head, denied since he had never considered that possibility. Dibbo wondered how they could possibly kill the boss when neither arrows nor swords were effective. He asked L if there truly was a way to kill it. Outside the gate, the Abyss group was surprised by how quickly the adventurers had conquered the situation. Mr. Abyss asked the first person to emerge, Jibber, about their mission. Breathlessly, she reported that their conquest had failed. They only managed to escape because some had acted as bait. The boss was too strong to handle. Abyss's demeanor instantly shifted, and he became irritable upon learning that they had fooled without achieving anything. Despite Jebber's attempts to explain, Abyss turned away in disappointment. Jebber hurriedly mentioned that L's group had not yet escaped because they were serving as bait, but Abyss dismissed their chances of survival, commenting coldly that it was just the frenzied poisonous mushroom after all before walking away. He even expressed his disdain for the adventurers as a group of luckless incompetents for encountering such a boss. Abyss believed that the two L's stood no chance alone and that it was best to give up to save time, as he wanted adventurers who could turn the impossible into possible. Inside the gate, the boss was still guarding the entrance. L stood on the cliff, bow in hand, coldly looking ahead, and whispered about beginning the hunt. A missile then shot from his bow, cutting through the air. This boss was stronger than any creature he had faced before. He used toxic gas, so maintaining distance and using long-range attacks was crucial. Since his current missiles were not strong enough, he planned to use a real binding spell to entangle it and shoot it at high speed, a skill that could turn the impossible into possible. This skill, called Fire Piercer, was like a fiery tornado hurtling towards the boss. It hit the creature, burrowing deeply into its body, creating a hole, although unfortunately, missing the intended target of its head. The boss, now aware of L's location, charged towards him. The use of the Fire Piercer limited L's mobility, and the cooldown was too long. He knew he had to finish the boss before it could reach him. A final Fire Piercer knocked it off its trajectory, and L immediately shouted an order. Below, Dibbo forcefully pulled on a rope, causing the boss to trip and fall directly into a muddy pond. Struggling to stand, it was hindered by the mud clinging to its body. It roared furiously at L from below. Just then, Dibbo reappeared and delivered another strike. The mud clogged the boss's toxic emission pores, allowing Dibbo to breathe more easily. With a taunting gesture, he beckoned the creature, signaling that he was ready to engage it in a further battle. The monster and Dibbo faced each other. From a cliff above, L observed the situation. His plan was to neutralize the enemy's advantage. Falling into the swamp had prevented the monster from emitting toxic gas. At this moment, close combat became Dibbo's advantage. He swung his weapon, the shaft of which was attached to a rope, allowing him to easily control the range. However, the plan didn't stop there. Blocking the monster's poison vent was only part of it. Another aspect was that the swamp was the worst battlefield map for any creature that relied on speed. The monster, surrounded by mud, couldn't move. From above, L fired a fire spear, and the monster could only raise his hand to shield itself. The spear pierced through its hand but did not finish the monster off. Dibbo couldn't help but curse it for its tenacity. From above, L signaled that his weakness was definitely in the Koron's head. Understanding this, Dibbo powerfully swung his weapon, striking at the monster's head. Unexpectedly, the monster blocked the attack and grabbed the weapon. As Dibbo was lifted by it, L used magic to send a wooden log flying towards the creature, hitting it like a giant wooden bat. Dibbo took the momentum to strike the monster's head and then jumped back to create distance. He grabbed his weapon again, charged forward, and danced around, distracting and confusing the monster. L simultaneously raised the mud to form a wall, blocking the creature's view. A mud waterfall struck, followed by a figure wielding a weapon. The monster quickly reacted, breaking through the mud stream to seize him. Unexpectedly, it grasped only air. But by the time he realized, Dibbo had appeared from behind, fiercely swinging a brilliant strike with his weapon, decapitating the huge monster. The monster's head fell into the muddy water, and Debo gave Elle a thumbs up. But in an instant, Elle's eyes widened in shock. The headless monster still managed to strike Debo down. Using blinding speed, it charged towards Elle. He quickly fired a fire spear using magic to manipulate the earth to block it. The monster leaped directly onto the earth, clinging to the mountain as it climbed towards him. Stunned, Elle tried to analyze the situation, left with only one arrow, one final chance. At that moment, Debo stood up, his face bloody but vigorous. Furious, he picked up his weapon and with unknown strength, unleashed a fierce blow that split the muddy water stream. The weapon struck, severing one of the monster's legs. Debo was briefly exhilarated by his revenge, but to his surprise, despite losing a leg, the monster still climbed up with astonishing agility. Barely managing to shout a warning, Elle fired a fire spear. Unexpectedly, the spear missed, and the monster roared in triumph. At that moment, Elle remained unusually calm, thanking the monster for revealing its true weakness. Debo, from below, was also surprised as it turned out the previous arrow was just a decoy flare. Then Elle took aim with his bow, shooting a real fire spear that pierced through the monster's body. The arrow spiraled into the monster's body, its weakness being inside its mouth. The monster fell to the grassy edge, exploding in bursts. Debo couldn't help but marvel at the painful end. Elle, using magic, maneuvered the rope to bring Debo to his side, startling him slightly. Just when they thought it was all over, the tenacious monster jumped up again. Its core was clearly exposed, aiming to strike a final blow. Meanwhile, Rakan was humorously laughing because Abyss had to return dejectedly. He joked about how energetic Rakan still was. Abyss, in a solemn voice, apologized, planning to hand the matter over to Knight Cygnus. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and despite Abyss' annoyance and intention to send them away, the door still opened. The two in the room were surprised by the newcomer. It was Elle, who had returned. Rakan couldn't help but laugh loudly, finding the situation amusing. Seeing Elle Palm enter, Rakan asked Abyss who he was, looking as if he had just returned from the dead. After the introductions, Rakan praised Elle for being as resilient as rumored. He added that Elle was a person the association greatly needed, to which Elle Palm just bowed his head in thanks. Rakan asked if he thought he could survive the 100 gates, and Elle bluntly replied that it would be difficult. This answer irritated Abyss, who scolded Elle Palm for how he spoke with Rakan, eventually threatening that he still owed a huge debt, to which Palm simply bowed his head in silence. In contrast to Abyss, Rakan nonchalantly asked Elle what he wanted. On another note, Phillips knew about the demand of 5 million mesos per person, worried that the others might reject this proposal and that an infuriated Abyss would blacklist them from the association. But Palm assured Phillips not to worry about that, leaving Phillips at a loss. Suddenly, from behind, a Buru approached with a greeting that made Phillips scold him for speaking that way to someone who had just saved him, even challenging him. In reality, Ibaru was there to apologize for underestimating the two and to deliver the agreed-upon money, even adding a bit extra as a gesture. Holding the money bag, Phillips was still slightly baffled but thanked them. However, Palm loudly declared they didn't need it, insisting he would only take 1.5 million, no more, no less. Ibaru and his subordinates were completely taken aback. Meanwhile, Phillips, regretting the extra money being rejected, grumbled that they should have said so from the start, causing him false hope. Suddenly, Palm looked at Ibaru and asked if his name was Ibaru, and questioned whether he would dare engage in risky ventures just for money. Ibaru was somewhat puzzled by this question. On the other side, Abyss disagreed with Palm's price of 10 million mesos because with that amount they could hire more than what was offered. He said he would call them to renegotiate the price. However, Rakan disagreed and told Abyss to read the announcement that the Gafford Mechanics Association would only send El Palm's 2-person team, which Abyss initially scoffed at but was surprised to learn that the Dark Lord Jin was also involved. Rakan warned Abyss not to make any more foolish mistakes as the war had already begun. At the gate, the participants of the expedition were gathering. Palm and Phillips arrived, and those who saw their badges showed a wary expression. A man named Sheldon greeted them, and upon realizing Palm was rank C, he displayed surprise and disdain. At that moment, Kiri arrived and mentioned that she needed to speak with him. Palm recalled Abyss, saying that they would be collaborating with the Cygnus Knights, a group celebrated as a symbol of strength and power that had begun to take an interest in the gates, and that partnering with them would increase their success rate. Abyss had also hinted that they were plotting something murky. Currently, Kiri acted very authoritarian, stating she didn't want any trouble and that Palm's team should silently follow her orders, which angered Phillips. Soon after, various associations began to reveal themselves with diverse appearances. First, the Dig Mechanics Association, led by Crocus, looked very peculiar. Second, the Murdia Mechanics Association, led by Kubel, and also the Goldrich Mechanics Association, led by the 3 sisters of the Nadisha family. Lonko appeared and introduced himself as the guardian and helper to guide them out. He then explained the rules about the gate. Legendary items that fall would belong to the association they were working for, and anyone attempting to claim these items for personal gain would face a confrontation with a Level B rogue adventurer group. Philip was surprised to learn that this rogue group consisted of 5 mages. Following this briefing, everyone turned towards the grand, imposing red gate. Kiri started boasting that she was the only one who could successfully clear the gate, prompting Philip to question if she was out of her mind. Palm, on the other hand, was unfazed and merely brooded over his efforts, which were all aimed at being the first to enter this gate, a gate that spanned his past and present lives. He was determined to succeed as the series of events had already begun. The vibrant red gate opened and a line of adventurers entered. Dibbo was amazed at the enormous size of the grass in this area. Kiri, walking ahead, heard this and urged him to hurry up, reminding him that they were not here to sightsee. This teasing clearly irritated Dibbo, who turned to ask El Palm if they were really going to let it slide. Turning around, he found El Palm lying face down on the ground. At that moment, loud noises emerged from afar, signaling the approach of a fierce herd of ribbon pigs heading straight towards them. The herd numbered in the thousands, causing instant panic among the group. Kiri quickly called for everyone to disperse and draw the pigs' attention, as there were still a few teams that had not entered the area, and it was an unspoken rule that teams should not intervene immediately. The group quickly split into smaller teams, with Kiri's team heading towards the forest, which offered many obstacles ideal for hunting. However, they realized that they had lost track of their mechanic Gapor. El Palm and Dibbo had managed to escape earlier and were now standing safely. Dibbo asked how El Palm knew the ribbon pigs would attack. El Palm explained that based on his experience, monster groups often moved in herds in such large grasslands. Ribbon pigs, a type of monster known for their aggression and averaging 2 meters in length, typically moved in herds ranging from hundreds to thousands. They were a formidable opponent but not invincible. Hunters simply preferred not to exert themselves too early by dividing the herd. He recalled the number 100 from now on. It was impossible to predict which monsters would appear. Everything was just beginning, and in his past life, the conquest of the Sleepywood 100-man gate had ended in disaster with the death of all adventurers. Seeing him reflective, Dibbo asked what he was thinking about. Just then, distracted for a moment, Dibbo stumbled into a trap, and if not for El Palm's timely pull, he would have been impaled by the wooden stakes. Dibbo was terrified, unable to understand who would set traps here. Simultaneously, Babel and his teammates were dealing with several similar traps. Babel found the traps to be quite pathetic, while Crocus warned him not to lose vigilance. The traps, appearing unfinished yet dangerous if triggered, seemed to mimic human hunting tactics, indicating that they were not set by ordinary monsters. Only a hob, known for their intelligence, could be responsible for such devices, posing a nuisance and likely being the boss of the Red Gate. Crocus confidently suggested he had an inkling of the gate's difficulty level, stating that anyone not on par with him would meet a hopeless end. He then turned to find a solution, urging everyone to follow him. Suddenly, the sound of something falling startled him. He thought a teammate had slipped but realized Babel had been decapitated without them noticing. Everyone's heads were swiftly and deftly cut off, including Crocus. As he lost consciousness, he saw the culprit, a man with blonde hair and a fully covered hat, laughing mockingly, calling him a fool who thought he knew everything. William sat on a rocky ledge, mumbling about someone's idea to use the ribbon pigs to facilitate his work, making it easier for him. He found it all bothersome, but due to limited time, had to accept it. Behind him stood the 3 sisters Natasha, frozen and unable to move, all affected by William's spell lasting 30 minutes. Trembling, Natasha asked why he was doing this. William, surprised at first, deemed her dangerous and killed her first. He answered Natasha's earlier question, stating he was doing what a dark wizard would do, then promptly killed her 2 sisters. Earlier, William had been summoned by his superior, a man with white silver hair, who expressed that he had long awaited this day to emerge from hiding, establishing his influence throughout the guild. Now the time was ripe. William replied that he would not disappoint. His superior then handed him a fiery feather, stating it was a gift and that failure was not an option. Now hanging around his neck, William knew he must not let the feather extinguish, suggesting he needed to strive harder. At the Hob camp, Dibbo and El Palm were hiding nearby. Dibbo, horrified as he surveyed the enemy numbers, asked El Palm if all those Hobs were bosses. El Palm was speechless because he had already explained that only one among them was the boss. El Palm noted that whether or not they were the boss didn't matter much, as beyond their innate strength, their aggressive nature and the loot they collected from adventurers already made them challenging, with the added complication that some variants could use skills for the items they possessed. Hearing this only escalated Dibbo's fear, feeling as if the group of Hobs was an entire army of adventurers and now just the 2 of them had to face them. El Palm calmly complimented Dibbo's quick understanding, which only increased Dibbo's panic. He exclaimed that the 2 of them couldn't possibly win and they should at least join forces with Kiri or someone else. El Palm was puzzled since Dibbo had wanted to split off initially, but that was because Dibbo hadn't known much about these creatures. Soon, Dibbo attempted to ambush a lone Hob but failed because it was too alert. The Hob quickly counterattacked. Dibbo skillfully dodged and struck it in the face and then the leg, causing it to lose balance. He intended to finish it off with the next blow, but the Hob dodged and even punched him so hard he spat blood and a tree trunk snapped. Dibbo took advantage of a gap to sever the Hob's left arm, but it grabbed him and slammed his face into the ground. Using his physical strength and the long handle of his axe, Dibbo dislocated the Hob's joint, forcing it to release him, and the two distanced themselves before engaging in combat again. After a while, the Hob's blood-soaked body fell and Dibbo, victorious, still bitterly thought El Palm would have helped a bit. El Palm nonchalantly stated that Dibbo could handle it and even managed to kill it, but Dibbo remained skeptical about their mission since they were supposed to fight an army of such creatures. Unexpectedly, the two stumbled upon a pile of beheaded corpses of the Cygnus Knights, luckily finding one survivor. El Palm asked if goblins had attacked, but the survivor denied it completely, saying it was all done by a bunch of bastards. Abbas was sitting cross-legged, smoking a cigar, observing that the situation didn't add up at all. There existed opportunists who frequented unknown gates to gather information and attack other adventurers, and even though these perpetrators were never caught as evidence disappeared once the gates closed, it was clear this was a battle with no victors. If one were to overcome the challenges of this gate, they would be utterly exhausted, and even if they succeeded in obtaining the unique item, suspicion would inevitably arise. Avis pondered whether these individuals could be among the elite of the trade guilds, but he firmly denied this, concluding that achieving their goal would only lead to conflict with other guilds. A guild would never risk so much on such a gamble. Clearly, there must be a larger purpose at play. Inside the gate, Dibbo and El Palm quickly noticed Kiri's absence. The survivor in distress revealed that Kiri was the betrayer. He expressed disbelief, then convinced himself, casting doubt on her decisions since entering the gate. Sobbing, he stammered that Kiri had confessed to being a disciple of the Dark Wizard. Hearing this title made Dibbo start. The Dark Wizard was a transcendental being from 800 years ago, who, along with his disciples, had once threatened the realm. To stop him, a group of 6 heroes had united and eventually sealed both the wizard and themselves. With the wizard's disciples disoriented, the allied forces had retaliated and wiped out the Dark Wizard's followers. This was a well-known story, and Dibbo could hardly believe Kiri's alleged identity. El Palm suggested they should find Kiri and invited the survivor to come along, who readily agreed. At the same time, Kiri was confronting William. William smiled, mentioning how the plan had smoothly progressed thanks to everyone splitting up, and asked Kiri if she had received his gift yet. Kiri drew her sword, demanding to know who they were. Meanwhile, Dibbo was assisting the survivor, offering a few words of comfort. The survivor responded calmly, but unbeknownst to Dibbo, he subtly held a dangerous knife in his left hand. On the other side, Kiri was facing a group of dark wizards. William was thrilled to see her capable of taking on 4 opponents by herself, admiring her as truly deserving of her title as the captain of the Cygnus Knight squad. The prolonged battle was draining Kiri. Her sword glowed brightly, a magic circle appeared behind her, and she used a skill called Upper Sun. An ignorant assailant ridiculed her for showing off and charged at her with a high strike. Unexpectedly, his attack was instantly repelled by Kiri, who countered with a strike called Sun Slash that broke the enemy's sword in 2. Exhausted, she demanded the intruders reveal their purpose there. William then ordered his minions to attack all at once. At that moment, a person suddenly appeared, decapitating one of the minions with a single strike. Both William and Kiri were shocked and panicked by this unexpected arrival, who turned out to be Dibbo. Rewinding a bit earlier, Dibbo was comforting the last surviving knight, assuring him that El would soon find the person he was looking for. Suddenly, that man revealed a dagger in his hand, smiling outwardly while swiftly attacking Dibbo. However, in a brief moment, he realized his hand had been blown apart from the wrist. The man fell down screaming in pain, to the astonishment of Dibbo. The attacker was El, who had been there all along, coldly watching the true villain screaming in agony. Dibbo was stunned and asked El what had happened. El replied as expected, revealing that he had suspected the man from the beginning. He then raised his staff towards the man to end this drama. Returning to the present, William approached and stated that Dibbo was an uninvited guest. One of his subordinates reminded him of Dibbo's identity, guessing that their plan had failed. William was displeased and decided to confront them with his minions directly. Kiri quickly warned Dibbo, but he was already prepared. Then William ordered everyone to attack. Dibbo told Kiri to handle one enemy, and he would take care of the rest. He nearly sent an enemy Amiya's maker with a devastating move, but at that moment, an arrow whizzed past and another enemy launched a surprise attack. Dibbo was hit from behind, and as the attacker turned to deliver another blow, Kiri, too startled, yelled out, unsure of what he was doing. Yet, unexpectedly, the assailant merely struck the ground, sending debris flying everywhere. Dibbo appeared coldly and remarked that he was merely playing games with them. Following that, he delivered a palm strike that sent the cowardly sneak attacker flying. Another person who charged at him was swiftly dealt with by Debo using a powerful strike. The attacker couldn't believe Debo could be that strong. Suddenly, from behind the man, someone else flew in, and the two collided, falling down tragically. It was Kiri who had kicked the man, her eyes fierce, declaring these people unworthy of being called elite. The minions lay pitifully on the ground, unable to do anything. Suddenly, William, who had been indifferent until now, spoke up. He said he could no longer stand by and raised his bow, his arrow blazing brightly with fire. Debo also realized it was a fire arrow. Instantly, an arrow flew towards him, faster than even L's, catching him off guard. The space exploded, and William was smug about his fire arrow, thinking Debo wouldn't be able to dodge it. Just when he thought he had succeeded, he froze. As the smoke cleared, a strong figure appeared shielding Debo. William was terrified by the sight. L then pointed towards the tall reeds nearby and announced that another guest was arriving. Before they could react from the reeds charged a massive wild boar-like monster. In the frightened eyes of William's group, a mature boar leading a similarly large group of young ones charged at them. The boar pack attacked William's men while L's group disappeared. William, caught by the boar, was in a miserable state, cursing them. After a while, his team managed to defeat the monster pack. William immediately ordered his men to pursue L's group right away as there wasn't much time. He felt he couldn't let them escape through the gate, sensing something very strange about L's presence. As his minions found footprints, he instructed them to just hold L off, and he would personally deal with him. Others were skeptical, thinking L was insignificant, but William didn't see it that way, as he wouldn't allow anyone within the gate to be stronger than himself. Meanwhile, the three members of L's group had run deep into the forest. Debo optimistically thought that the wild boars had killed the enemies, but L disagreed, saying they weren't that weak. Debo asked L why he didn't directly eliminate those people, to which L critically responded that the truth was he wasn't as strong as them. L recalled the fire arrow William had used earlier. He had fired a similar arrow in return, which also caused an explosion. However, to his surprise, William's arrow managed to penetrate through his, making him realize that his arrow did no damage to William's fire arrow. Debo was shocked and thought L was joking, only to realize that L had actually fled. Suddenly, L showed him the magical circle marks on his hand, explaining that although both were similar, William's power had become unreasonably strong, surely due to some mysterious method to enhance his own strength. L stated that William must be the strongest within this gate. Debo was unsure what to do next. Relying on the wild beasts was no longer viable and could even backfire on them. At that moment, Kiri spoke up, stressing that the issue of dark mage disciples infiltrating the Sigma Smite Order was of utmost importance at the moment. They needed to get out immediately, as cleaning up the gate was no longer a priority. L calmly told Debo to ignore her. Kiri, infuriated, insulted him as a former ignorant slave. L questioned what she planned to do once outside reporting, arguing that her report wouldn't be enough to eradicate those people. The disciples of dark magic had been hidden and deeply rooted in the world of Feng Thu for a long time, revealing their return would only shake the snake in the grass, making them shed unnecessary tales and hide even deeper, continuing to wreak havoc on the world like an unstoppable epidemic. Kiri, furious, grabbed his collar and yelled, questioning what he could possibly achieve here if they couldn't leave or defeat them. L calmly replied that he would show them who the real prey was. Meanwhile, William's minion Sheldon was rushing through the forest trying to find traces of L's group. Suddenly, Diggo appeared right behind him, greeting him with an unfriendly smile and nearly beheading the enemy with a blow. Other minions surrounded and attacked Debo, but what awaited them was a trap already set. A large pole flew out, sweeping through the enemies, activated by Kiri. While continuing the fight, Debo swung a devastating blow downwards. Unexpectedly, Sheldon agilely dodged and aimed a knife towards Debo. Debo quickly tilted his head, causing the knife to merely graze his cheek. Before Sheldon could react, Debo delivered a painful knee strike to him. As Sheldon lost his balance, Debo unleashed a flurry of punches on him. While one of the other minions was preparing to shoot an arrow, Kiri appeared from behind. She powerfully swung her sword, delivering her fiercest blows, which left the minion struggling to defend. Kiri's eyes blazed as if she were channeling all her frenzied hatred into her enemy, growling that she was extremely frustrated with such scum. Meanwhile, William had heard the noise of the fight but didn't pay much attention. He was more concerned with the person standing before him. L, holding his staff, coldly stared at William. Both of their staves glowed with magic, and William was pleased that his prey had come right to him. The two simultaneously tightened their grip on their weapons and launched their fire arrows. The giant rocket sped forward, and L Palm swiftly dodged, not forgetting to counter with a similar move. William, grinning broadly, praised the action as brilliant, standing unfazed by the magic spell. The rocket caused a large explosion, burning the area around it. As El Palm shielded himself from the dust and observed, suddenly a stone tore through the air towards him. Just as he narrowly dodged it, William appeared behind him with a brightly glowing magic staff, questioning El Palm if that was all he could do, before launching another rocket. After several exchanges of rockets between them, the surroundings became extremely hot with sparks flying everywhere. William, observing El Palm, who appeared unharmed, hesitantly asked if he had just neutralized his attack. Displaying immense arrogance and confidence, William was certain El Palm lacked the power to block such a formidable spell. Hence his curiosity about how El Palm had managed to intrigue him even more. El Palm, hearing the question, showed no interest in responding. William, slightly disappointed, grabbed his magic staff and quickly moved on, saying they might as well fight while chatting. Launching another powerful rocket, William decided he would figure it out himself. El Palm, no longer looking to dodge, firmly countered, blocking the rocket with a similarly majestic fire spell. William, wide-eyed, realized El Palm had used a mind control technique to turn his own rocket into a sharp drill, piercing through his spell. This was a method William had never seen before, and it was exceptionally successful, shattering the formidable rocket spell. The massive magical collision created an explosion that reached the skies, leaving remnants that horrified others. Muttering in disbelief, William realized El Palm had used the mind control technique to enhance his skills, marking him as the kind of genius others casually dismiss and also the kind he hated the most. Stirred by this, William was even more excited. Grinning broadly, he launched another rocket, eager to see what else El Palm could do. El Palm clenched his fist, activating a ring on his hand that emitted a blue light, gathering debris to form a solid stone shield. The rocket, immensely powerful, pierced through the shield in a blink, and El Palm seized the moment to escape. William laughed loudly as he chased after El Palm, asking if he only thought about running away. But before he could revel in his apparent victory, El Palm suddenly stopped and launched a rocket that sliced through the air, forcing William to hastily duck to avoid it. William was unsure what El Palm had prepared for this, but without hesitation, El Palm controlled the rocket to continuously pursue William, causing him visible irritation as veins bulged on his forehead. William cast a rocket attack, and El Palm countered with a fire spell. Amid the explosion and smoke, William had somehow moved behind El Palm, his ring glowing an eerie blue. He raised his hand to his mouth and blew out a toxic breath. The blue smoke spread, completely enveloping El Palm. William casually walked out, the toxin very strong, but since he could not defend while casting, he used the rocket's cooldown time to block El Palm's attack. Now, El Palm couldn't move for 30 minutes. William, regretting that the rocket was on cooldown, and thus couldn't use it to finish El Palm, was eagerly anticipating this moment, relishing the sight of El Palm's desperation. He perversely licked his knife while asking if El Palm was trembling and crying. Before his twisted face could display for long, El Palm appeared in front of him with a punch. William, completely unprepared, took the hit directly. The punch was so strong that it knocked out William's teeth and sent him flying. Elsewhere, Ibru and Debo were at a tavern, where Ibru incessantly inquired about how El Palm resisted the toxin of the crazy poison mushroom. Debo, laughing heartily, said that even though Ibru wouldn't learn it, the technique was called vacuum, and El Palm had used mind control to suck all the air in and block it, even once sucking all the toxin from a large area to save Debo's life. Hearing this, Debo unabashedly boasted, causing Ibru to click his tongue in awe at the extraordinary skill, with Debo feeling proud as if he were the one being complimented, loudly proclaiming that his boss was incredibly strong. Back at the scene, William was so overwhelmed by the physical combo that he was left speechless. He still couldn't fathom why El Palm wasn't affected by the toxin. El Palm, lacking the patience to explain or listen to him talk, knocked him away and summoned his magic staff, without hesitation firing a rocket straight at William. Before the merciless rocket, one of William's arms was torn off and fell to the ground. He was in a pitiful state, and his ring lit up again. The toxin was released once more as a last desperate flail, and William cursed loudly. El Palm effortlessly neutralized the attack using spatial magic, suspecting that William was plotting something. He glanced at the purple magic staff lying on the ground, guessing that William wanted to reclaim his own staff. With no more concerns, he was certain he would finish William off the moment he thought he had achieved his goal. Just as he turned his head, he faced an unexpected fire spell from William. Shocked, El Palm tried to dodge. William had completely lost his mind. Having lost an arm and his proudest magic, he now only wanted to kill El Palm. El Palm was hit directly by a fireball, falling back and coughing up blood. He had let his guard down, not anticipating that William had a fireball at his sleeve, a mistake he had never made before his return. Seeing the relentless fireballs heading his way, El Palm realized he had been too arrogant. Far away, Gibbo had knocked out Sheldon, leaving him unconscious. Seeing a massive explosion in the distance, a sense of foreboding made him worryingly call out for his elder brother. Nearby, Kiri had quickly dealt with some stragglers, urging Debo not to waste any more time and finish Sheldon quickly to go help El Palm. Without waiting for a response, Debo turned sharply to retort that he was handling it and not to boss him around. Suddenly, blood splattered everywhere as an arrow pierced Sheldon's eye, ending his life before Debo could strike. A group of fully armed blue goblins appeared, causing Debo to grumble about their delayed arrival. Kiri wanted to handle them swiftly, but Debo warned that they were not to be underestimated, especially noting one peculiar goblin holding a staff and sitting on a palanquin like a leader. After his rampage, William, looking at the blazing fire before him, wondered if El Palm was truly dead. He was a mess, his eyes bloodshot, vomiting a pile of blood. After vomiting, he laughed, acknowledging that El Palm was strong to have pushed him to this point, regretting not asking for his name before attempting to finish him. Amidst the sea of flames, suddenly a voice responded. William, in fear, exclaimed it was impossible. Just as battered, El Palm emerged from the flames, holding the staff and telling William to remember his name well, as it would be the last one he'd hear. William, so confident of victory, believed El Palm was merely putting on a show, thinking he knew the extent of El Palm's abilities. El Palm admitted that he had almost given up, holding a cracked orb emitting light, declaring that catching William with just 2 spells was impossible. William quickly recognized the object in El Palm's hand as a magic stone and burst out laughing, claiming that El Palm had lost his mind, as absorbing the magic stone without enlightenment through countless experiences was futile. El Palm calmly agreed that experience and enlightenment were necessary, then magical rings of light continuously emanated from him, forming an incredibly thin shield. William was stunned as he witnessed the 3rd magic circle gradually appear on El Palm's wrist. El Palm had never lacked enlightenment and experience, but William, unable to believe it, stubbornly thought it was all an act and launched 2 rockets at once. El Palm frowned, stretched his magic staff into a bow, and fired back with rockets that were twice as powerful as William's. Seeing this, William frantically summoned a fireball. El Palm used mind control to transform his rockets into a drill that shot straight at William. The spell pierced through the forest. William didn't have time to express any last words, directly hit by such a powerful spell. All that was left were his charred, severed legs under the debris of the spell. El Palm casually observed the scene before him, suddenly expressing regret with a sigh, realizing he had forgotten to ask William's name. While the blue goblins were searching around, Kiri had no choice but to hug Debo and hide behind a tree trunk. She recalled the time when Debo could easily fight the monsters, excited about how effortlessly he could defeat them as if it were as simple as eating candy. However, as he delivered the 18th strike, a burst of fire suddenly engulfed him. The goblin responsible for this immediately sneered. Kiri was shocked to realize that the fire was the fire orb. She couldn't understand how a monster could both cast spells and use magical items. She lamented the unpredictable turn of events and decided to hide and wait for El to rescue them. As she was contemplating, a monster approached and immediately attacked, forcing her to flee with Debo. In a moment, Kiri threw Debo up to destroy a monster. She knew she could only handle one-on-one combat without the boss around, so she risked everything to run away with Debo. The boss, however, relentlessly unleashed a wall of fire to block Kiri's path and even hurled a fireball at her as she fled, laughing with pleasure. But as the smoke cleared, the blue goblin's laughter stopped and Kiri realized Debo had woken up. He immediately charged with a group of monsters led by the boss. Each swing of his axe swiftly dispatched the monsters. One tried to attack from behind, but Debo sensed it and dodged quickly. Before the boss could comprehend what was happening, it saw a surge of power heading its way. Kiri was astonished as Debo, so only a novice warrior, was now swinging his axe at the boss. However, the blue goblin was not ready to lose and decisively cast the fire orb at Debo. The attack forcefully knocked him back, but the boss also received a blow to one of its eyes, causing it to scream in frenzy. It quickly stood up to gather magic, and seeing this, Kiri immediately told Debo to back off so she could fight. Just as the blue goblin launched its decisive strike, it was countered by another powerful magic force. This magical strength forcefully swept up the boss's flames and hurled them back at it, instantly annihilating it. While Kiri was still bewildered, El arrived just in time. The immense magical power had fractured part of El's arm, but he remained calm, knowing he had arrived in time. Lonko was anxious as 3 days had passed with no news from the expedition team at the gate. Upon seeing the destroyed gate, he immediately rushed over and heard Kite calling for a bishop because there were survivors. Lonko quickly inquired about the situation, and Kite reported that only 3 members from the Gaypor Association had survived. El, one of the survivors, was in a panic and confirmed that the entire expedition team had been annihilated. When questioned by Lonko, El, trembling, revealed that there was a demon inside the gate. He did not know its name but had drawn its form to describe it. When everyone in the camp saw the drawing, they recognized it as a blue goblin, a type of monster rumored to possess high intelligence and the ability to use tools, which made the battle extremely challenging. Toriel, a representative of the Sky Merchant Association, was furious because her cousin had also been in the expedition team. Meanwhile, Franco, a representative from the Gold Ritchie Association, refused to accept this reality and suspected there was a traitor among them. He implied that the Gaypor Association might have betrayed their teammates to survive, leading to a heated argument with Abbas, the representative from the Gaypor Association. Abbas denied the accusations, asserting that they had no motive for betrayal as they didn't gain any items from the gate. After resting, L's group decided to leave. Lonko also advised them to be careful on their way back. As L left the battle area, Kite wondered why Lonko let them go so easily, to which he simply replied that everything was over. As L's group traveled through the forest, they discovered a snail, making Kiri suspect it was following L. Recalling their time inside the gate, Kiri reminded that they had destroyed the disciples of the Dark Sorcerer and wiped out the Blue Goblins, so they just needed to leave behind the item and pretend to be wounded to leave. However, L hesitated because he was holding a phoenix feather, a rare item that enhanced the power of the floral system god and could accumulate effects. He also realized that in his past life, all adventurers who entered this gate had been destroyed. Kiri continued to reason with L that if they took the item out without prior notification, they would be suspected. At that moment, the snail picked up 2 pieces of phoenix feather and handed them to L. Kiri was surprised to see him manage to take the item out undetected. L simply said that instead of worrying, it was better to find an effective solution. He also emphasized that the details of the incident must be kept absolutely confidential, as the Cygnus Knights had been infiltrated. If any information leaked, it would only drive the enemy to hide deeper. Elsewhere, a mysterious organization also received news that the Genus Merchant Association, the Mardia Organization, and the Dig Merchant Association had all been annihilated, with their conquests failing. A subordinate reported that only 3 members of the Gaper Merchant Association had survived, and despite suspicions of foul play, there was not enough evidence. The boss realized something was off, for if the plan was to annihilate everyone, then the 3 survivors surely must have encountered William. However, in L's statements there was no mention of William, which could mean the enemy might have known about the return of the disciples of the Dark Sorcerer. Fearing that their secrets might be exposed, the organization decided to eliminate all spies within the merchant associations. The boss laughed with satisfaction and agreed to a mysterious invitation, but also declared that the stage would change, and they would make the opponent the 101st guest. At the same time, a level 50 gate appeared, signaling that a battle was about to erupt. Reflecting on the past in Debo's eyes, his homeland was nothing short of hell. It was a place of extreme poverty, where living humanely was considered a luxury. His sisters suffered from a disease called black blood, enduring daily pain, and he could not even protect his only family member from death. At that time, Eren appeared and asked if he wanted help, but Debo coldly dismissed her, and that was the first time they met. Time passed, and Debo fought, growing stronger with each battle. When he defeated a monster, he was pleased to have topped his group. The other 2 teammates regretted being just 30 seconds slower, resigned to dishwashing duties, but didn't miss a chance to mock Debo for his arrogance. After the battle was over, Eren cheerfully declared that everything was finished and called for the group to leave. Debo looked at her with admiration, secretly thinking that a year had been enough to change his worth. Eren was a stoic yet warm heroine, always leading and protecting everyone. She was the one who helped him broaden his view of the world. Thus, his goal was nothing else but to support her. As the group entered a cave, a white-haired boy excitedly teased that experiencing real combat from the abandoned mine to the trial cave was truly fantastic. Debo, annoyed, yelled at him to stop laughing. However, the other person kept teasing him cheerfully, suggesting that if Debo wanted to be recognized as Eren's disciple, he should practice harder. Debo was visibly embarrassed by the mention. At that moment, Eren turned to ask Shannon if they were heading in the right direction. Shannon confirmed that there were traces left by her brother, but she also felt something strange in the air. Delving deeper inside, the group discovered a reservoir of red liquid that looked like lava. Someone marveled at how such a place could exist beneath the Elnas Mountains. A few days earlier, Shannon had earnestly asked Eren to help her find her brother in the abandoned mine at the Elnas Range, but Eren had declined, not wanting to deal with personal matters and thinking that Shannon was just causing a distraction. Witnessing this scene, Debo spoke up to convince Eren, promising to protect Shannon, which made Eren reconsider. Returning to the cave upon discovering a dead body, Shannon confirmed that it was not her brother. Eren noticed that the wounds on the body were not caused by a monster, and she determined that the person had died about a week ago. As she was reasoning, a sudden entity descended, attacking fiercely. Debo quickly protected Shannon, but Eren rushed forward to counterattack first, directing the team to attack from the left. The battle was fierce, and in the chaos, Shannon discovered a strange gate. After the battle, when the group sighed in relief, Miria suddenly realized that Shannon had disappeared. Approaching the cave entrance, Debo found her belongings left behind. He panicked upon realizing Shannon had entered alone. Eren also warned of a strong and dangerous energy emanating from deep within the cave. Debo determined to save Shannon because of his promise to protect her, but Miria advised him to stay calm. Finally, Eren confirmed that the creature inside was a threat to the forest realm, and the team decided to enter the cave together to face the looming danger. Inside, the group found Shannon standing next to a dead body. She confirmed it was her brother, causing Dibbo to panic and shout for her to stay still so he could reach her. However, Shannon just laughed maniacally, saying she couldn't go back anymore. She also revealed that Zakumi was actually the giant tree here, and the previous battle was just the beginning. Aran responded calmly, affirming that she would destroy the tree demon and told Shannon to leave. As Aran approached, she coldly asked Shannon if she intended to use her brother as a sacrifice. Terrified, Shannon pulled an orb from the corpse, proclaiming that Zakumi would possess and control them all. Just as she finished speaking, Dibbo was suddenly stabbed from behind and Aran was also attacked. Amidst the flames, Miria excitedly called for the completion of the performance for the Dark Sorcerer. Dibbo trembled as he witnessed Miria's transformation, wondering whether she had been possessed by Zakam. Aran angrily instructed Dibbo to finish her off immediately, as she was no longer Miria. Without delay, Aran used all her strength to destroy the stone pillars, but she immediately vomited blood and blamed herself for bringing the group there. Dibbo also rushed forward, trying to eliminate their transformed teammate. Before dying, the teammate thanked Dibbo and asked him to take care of Aran. Aran immediately struck at a gigantic tree, but the statue quickly regenerated and counterattacked. She and Dibbo then joined forces to attack it. Meanwhile, someone like Maria rushed forward, loudly vowing to sacrifice their life for the Supreme Being, but Aran immediately struck her down. With only the statue remaining, Dibbo realized the battle would be extremely difficult. Suddenly, he shouted to Aran to kill him before he was fully possessed. Aran reluctantly apologized while Dibbo bitterly accepted his fate, considering it a punishment for his misguided thoughts. At that moment, Dibbo was pulled into another dimension where he saw his sister Dinev. He was horrified, not understanding why she was there, and angrily questioned the mastermind behind it all. Aran tried to calm him, but Dibbo completely lost control and furiously attacked her. Aran was forced to dodge while trying to destroy the statue. When she had a chance to deliver a decisive blow, Dibbo reappeared, causing her to hesitate. Eventually, she apologized to Dibbo and delivered the final blow, destroying everything. As things settled, Dibbo tremblingly asked whether Zakumi had truly been defeated. An exhausted Aran happily confirmed and said she thought she wouldn't have the chance to say goodbye. Realizing something, Dibbo panicked and begged Aran not to leave, but Aran gently said that 800 years ago she and her team had once failed, and she was no longer the one to stop the Dark Wizard. However, Dibbo was different, having the talent and strength to do so. Dibbo painfully denied, thinking he could not be as strong as her. Before her last breath, Aran entrusted the responsibility of protecting the World Tree to Dibbo, believing he would do well. Then she smiled, saying she was tired and wanted to rest. Desperate, Dibbo called out Aran's name, but she was gone forever. He had to inform her friends and eventually left the place. Without Aran, it was nothing short of hell for him. Dibbo was tormented because he couldn't protect the goal he cherished, make amends for his mistakes, or fulfill Aran's wishes. When he was so exhausted that he couldn't go on, a mysterious figure suddenly attacked him with a fireball. Dibbo awoke to find himself at home. Dinev cheerfully told him that he had been unconscious for a while without any injuries, even talking in his sleep. She asked if he had had a nightmare, but Dibbo couldn't remember anything. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Dinev was surprised as she didn't remember arranging any visits. When Dibbo answered it, Elle appeared, announcing that their plan had progressed quickly and asked Dibbo to get ready. Dibbo, feeling despondent, asked if he could rest for a day, but Elle just laughed, saying that he had already had a good rest. Before leaving, Elle asked Dibbo for 200,000 meso, which immediately angered Dibbo, who vehemently refused. At the Gaypor Association, Abbas was astonished when Elle claimed to have overcome a group of goblins, killing 97 people. He demanded more information from him, stressing that only then would he receive a reward. However, Elle nonchalantly pulled out 2 million meso, declaring his debts paid. Abbas was stunned to see such a large sum, suspecting that Elle had been secretly making money before and was exploiting this situation. When Abbas questioned about the bonus for a new contract, Elle demanded 50 million meso. Abbas yelled at the absurdity of the amount since Elle was only rank C, but Elle didn't hesitate and simply stood up, ending the conversation abruptly, which left Abbas in shock. Back in reality, Dibbo asked Elle about the situation, and he casually replied that Abbas had refused after hearing that the contract bonus he demanded was 50 million meso. Dibbo was shocked, thinking the amount was ludicrous. While they were talking, the two suddenly got caught in a conflict in the slums. A man who was thrown at their feet took the opportunity to ask for help, calling them big brothers, which irritated Dibbo. A man with blue hair then demanded they pay 3 million meso to settle the dispute. As the argument continued, Elle threw a bag of money to pay off without hesitation, stunning Dibbo. Afterwards, he called for Ralph to follow, which surprised him because Elle knew his name. Ralph doubted Elle's motives and inquired about money, but Elle nonchalantly said that he had spent all his remaining funds. Ralph asked about the reason for joining, and when he learned Elle wasn't working for anyone, he refused to cooperate. However, Ralph proposed a special price of 3 million meso to join Elle's team. Dibbo was angry at Ralph's attitude. At this moment, Beiju from the Kenya Merchants Association appeared and sought out L. She admired his ability to conquer the gate of 100 men and proposed recruiting his team. To join, they needed to pass a simple test by clearing the gate. The association would pay 3 million meso upfront, and if successful, they would receive a reward of 50 million meso. Ralph was extremely astonished by this figure, and Beiju asked L if he wanted to join. Beiju announced that the gate conquest would take place in 3 days and wished L luck. Dibbo was excited about the big opportunity, but was surprised when L decisively threw the contract money to Ralph, promising to pay an additional 7 million meso after completing the mission. Dibbo was bewildered, not understanding why L would entrust such a large sum to someone as dubious as Ralph. However, L disregarded his objections and quickly left for another meeting. When Kiri appeared, Dibbo grimaced and vocally objected to the presence of this noisy girl. Nonetheless, Kiri nonchalantly replied that she had come to fulfill a promise. The group set out in heavy rain and eventually reached the gate. Dibbo remained optimistic, believing that 5 teams totaling 50 people would surely be strong enough to conquer this gate. Conversely, Ralph was annoyed at having to cooperate with people he considered useless and worried that the money to be earned might be reduced. Beiju once again introduced the mission and explained that this time the gate was orange level, with a maximum capacity of 50 people and 3 cracks. She believed the current number was sufficient to complete the mission. L, though pensive, maintained his stance, realizing that the Kenya Merchants Association had started exploiting this place earlier than in his previous life. Nevertheless, having conquered this gate before, his plan would not change. Beiju continued to emphasize that if a second gate was discovered, all teams must fire a signal flare. Dibbo was curious about this concept, and Kiri explained that some gates have a second dungeon inside, with completely different terrain and monsters. The orange gate has 2 dungeon levels, meaning they would have to clear it again after overcoming the first challenge. Dibbo was astonished, while Ralph scoffed at his lack of knowledge. Later, Ralph suggested that they had not yet decided who would be the team leader, and that this position should be determined based on ability. El coldly responded, recognizing Ralph's greed. At that moment, El agreed that the team leader would be decided based on contributions during this mission. Ralph secretly felt triumphant, believing that El had fallen into his trap. He thought that once he became the team leader, things would become much more interesting. Observing El's team, Ralph wore a calculating smile. After wishing everyone good luck, they all started entering the gate. Kiri was relieved that they had finally started, while Dibbo was excitedly thinking about the 50 million meso if they managed to close the gate. Ralph didn't miss the opportunity to mock, telling Dibbo, who he thought was naively treating this like a camping trip, that they probably wouldn't see each other again, which infuriated Dibbo to the point of raising his middle finger and challenging him to a fight. But Ralph ignored it, as he wouldn't engage in anything unprofitable. Dibbo cursed, unable to understand why El would allow such a mood-ruining person into the team. By this time, part of Dibbo's body had entered the gate, and as he turned his head, he saw the scenery change dramatically. Demon-eyed monsters were rampaging everywhere, and a group of people were desperately fighting, with blood and bodies visibly strewn across the ground, shouting warnings to each other to run away. A demon eye lunged directly at Dibbo and pinned him to the ground. Dibbo struggled with both hands against its enormous body, as its large tongue licked him as if he were an appetizer. Ralph rushed over and kicked the monster away, rescuing Dibbo. He told Dibbo to calm down quickly. Kiri, standing by, couldn't understand why the gate had opened right amidst a horde of monsters. The demon eyes ferociously roared and charged. El appeared and killed them with controlled fire missiles, seeming a bit worried as the current situation was entirely different from his previous life. Kiri joined the battle, her sword gleaming gold as she swung a powerful uppercut, but a demon eye dodged by curling its body. Kiri persisted and swung her sword again, but the agile demon eyes began moving in a strange pattern at a speed she couldn't anticipate. One of them charged at her, striking her vulnerable neck, causing her to stagger and fall, and the rest seized the opportunity to finish her off. Kiri clenched her teeth, unwilling to accept defeat, but fortunately, a powerful energy surged forward, tearing apart all the demon eyes around her. Dibbo was also struggling and unable to counterattack. Suddenly, the figure of a large man rushed forward, smashing a demon eye with a punch, its blood splattering onto Dibbo's astonished face. It was Ralph, with a level 3 badge clearly visible on his wrist. Kiri was also stunned, unable to deny the terrifying strength of the level 3. Ralph efficiently handled the demon-eyed monsters around him, and with Dibbo and Kiri now out of the game, only he and El remained. As Ralph fought, he silently assessed El. A demon eye suddenly dodged his grasp and charged at him. Ralph, undisturbed, had already prepared a hidden punch, killing the creature and concluding that El was useful. He thought about the hefty 50 million meso reward and even considered that, since the association seemed to favor El, he might receive even more. Thus, Ralph allowed himself to become immersed in the illusion of wealth if he took over this team. While his emotions peaked, Ralph was unexpectedly kicked by Elle, who had appeared out of nowhere. Ralph stumbled but didn't forget to question why Elle would sneak attack him. Elle's reply that no thanks were needed only irritated Ralph more. Suddenly, dozens of magic arrows rained down, killing numerous demon eyes, cracking the earth and targeting where Ralph had just been standing. Ralph cursed loudly in surprise. Meanwhile, as everyone was surrounded by demon eyes, in the distance, a figure masked and wielding a bow, the one who had shot the magic arrows, was spotted. Elle quickly pinpointed the archer's location and charged into the swarm of demon eyes. The arrows continued to come, decisively cutting down any life in their path. Despite the situation still being favorable, the archer shuddered as he realized Elle was hiding behind the bodies of the creatures, with a fire-glowing wand raised ready to attack. A powerful fire missile aimed precisely at the archer gave him no time to react. Ralph watched in astonishment, not expecting Elle to react so smartly and swiftly, both blocking an attack from a demon eye and retaliating, a very courageous action. At that moment, Debo panicked and yelled for Elle to be careful. Elle, turning around in shock, saw dozens of similar arrows being shot from the opposite direction of the archer. After the surprise attack, Elle's right arm was injured. He realized he had clearly hit the archer already, and moreover, it was a surprise attack from behind. Kiri, realizing the danger, urgently told Elle to run away immediately. Ralph was frozen in shock, repeating to himself to run. Just then, dozens of similar magic arrows fell like rain right over their heads. Ralph desperately asked where they could possibly run to.